A chemical weapon has never been used against a member of NATO until last week. Britain says Moscow is responsible for a nerve agent attack that has put more than 100 people in danger. Tonight, the first UK response, kicking out some Russian diplomats and a royal boycott of soccer's World Cup. I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. This is The Day.
The Russian state was culpable for the attempted murder of Mr. Skripal and his daughter. They have treated the use of a military-grade nerve agent in Europe with sarcasm, contempt and defiance. The United Kingdom will now expel 23 Russian diplomats who have been identified as undeclared intelligence officers. They have just 1 week to leave. This will be the single biggest expulsion for over 30 years. It is essential that we now come together with our allies and to send a clear message to those who would seek to undermine them.
Also coming up, a fourth term as German Chancellor. Angela Merkel, the world's most powerful woman, made a promise today that she will probably never make again.
I swear that I will dedicate my efforts to the well-being of the German people, perform my duties conscientiously and do justice to all. So help me God.
We begin the day with the first response to the first ever chemical weapons attack inside a member of NATO. The country attacked Britain, the country behind the attack, Russia. Now, that is the conclusion of British intelligence following last week's poisoning of a former Russian spy and his daughter. More than 100 people are still feared to be in danger due to exposure from the nerve agent that was used. Yet, Prime Minister Theresa May, she has yet to describe the incident in such stark terms. The UN Security Council and the European Union will hold meetings on the attack, but so far the retaliation remains a British affair. Today, May told Parliament that she is expelling 23 Russian diplomats suspected of being spies, and there will be a royal boycott. No member of the royal family will attend the Soccer World Cup in Russia this summer. Does this punishment fit the crime? We have more in this report.
May announced the measures after Russia ignored a deadline to provide an explanation for the attack. She said Moscow's failure to cooperate showed what she called their disdain for the gravity of the events. Her conclusion when it came was unambiguous.
So, Mr. Speaker, there is no alternative conclusion other than that the Russian state was culpable for the attempted murder of Mr. Skripal and his daughter, and for threatening the lives of other British citizens in Salisbury, including Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey.
She said the steps against Moscow would include the freezing of some Russian assets and the suspension of high-level contacts. The headline move, though, was what will be the largest expulsion of Russian diplomats from the UK in more than 30 years.
Under the Vienna Convention, the United Kingdom will now expel 23 Russian diplomats who have been identified as undeclared intelligence officers. They have just 1 week to leave.
The Russian embassy in London described the measures as unacceptable, unjustified and short-sighted. The ambassador said Moscow wanted to see samples of the nerve agent used in the attack and accused London of failing to stick to international rules on such matters.
First, we want to see the samples. Full stop. Without the samples, without the official procedure of the organization of the prohibition of the chemical weapons, we're not going too far. I think that Britain should follow the international law.
As ties with Russia now look set to enter a new deep freeze, the UK is looking to its allies for support. The EU's Donald Tusk says he believes the attack was inspired by Moscow and promised to discuss it at an EU summit next week.
All right, for some analysis now, we want to bring in Anthony Glees. He's director of the Center for Security and Intelligence Studies at the University of Buckingham. He joins us from Oxford. Good evening to you. So we've got these 23 diplomats that the Prime Minister is kicking out. Do we know who they are and why were they selected?
I think we can very safely assume they were selected by Britain's security service, the MI5, and they were selected because of their titles. People need to know there are basically two sorts of intelligence officers who operate in foreign countries: those who are attached to an embassy legally, and those who are independent of the embassy, so-called illegals. Now, of the legals in the embassy, some of those people in the embassy will be normal diplomats doing their open source diplomatic activity, but some will be secret intelligence officers. And MI5, our security service, will have a good idea of who they are.
So, Mr. Glees, are you saying then that these 23 people, they may be listed as diplomats, but they're actually doing espionage in the UK?
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. And of course, before they leave the United Kingdom in a week, we will have to be satisfied that none of them was in Salisbury and involved in the attempted assassination of Mr. Skripal and his daughter Yulia, because it is possible that some of them may have been.
Well, if we know so quickly that 23 people are suspected spies in the UK, why weren't they kicked out a long time ago? Why are they in the country right now?
Okay, it's a very good question. In the real world of international politics, every single country houses intelligence officers in its embassy. We do it in the United Kingdom, you do it in the Federal Republic, and the Russians do it in Russia. The question really is if they cross the line and do things that are seriously damaging to the national security of the country that they are in. And when that happens, the decision has to be taken to expel them. I think we can expect the Russians to start expelling British diplomats any moment now.
So what we've got tonight then is we've got the UK expelling diplomats who are really spies, and we've also got a royal boycott of the Summer World Cup in Russia this summer. Would you say that this punishment fits the crime?
Well, I think I mean, there are other things. Theresa May has said other things. There is expulsion, there is a seizure of Russian assets in the UK, which is a very important measure. There are checks on aircraft flying into the United Kingdom from Russia, and there is a suggestion that the royal family will not go and look at the World Cup. Of course, it's up to FIFA to decide whether the England team should go and play in the World Cup, and indeed whether any European team should go in the should play in the World Cup in Russia in June and July. My own feeling is that this is such a serious matter. Our Prime Minister, the British Prime Minister, has said with a probability that borders on certainty, the Russian state is to blame for this attack. Two people fighting for their lives,
Yes.
British police officers seriously injured. 500 people in Salisbury woke up yesterday morning fearing they too may have been contaminated by this vile nerve agent. This is, in effect, an invasion through chemical means of British soil. And that has to have very serious consequences.
You say it is an invasion with a chemical weapon on British soil. Britain is a member of NATO. NATO today said that this is the first offensive use of a nerve agent on a NATO member since 1949. We didn't hear anything to that extent today from Theresa May. Do you think this situation has the potential to become a NATO incident?
I think it could become a NATO incident, yes, because I think it deserves to be a NATO incident. What's very striking to some observers, including myself in the United Kingdom, is how quickly Germany and other European Union countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, but also France, came out to support, and the European Parliament came out to support Mrs. May very strongly and to say that the blame for this ultimately rests with Russia. The response from the White House was not immediate and was very anemic and by no means as strong. Now, that's a problem for Mrs. May. British people have voted to get out of the European Union, and they voted, they're told, to get closer to America. But that's not seemed to work out that way.
Yeah, that's a very good point, especially the day after the Secretary of State was fired by the U.S. President. It's not a good situation for the British Prime Minister tonight, that is for sure. Anthony Glees, thank you very much. We appreciate your insights tonight.